So let me know when to start.
Yeah, you can start. You can
All
start.
right. So thank you so much for having me here. My name is Manish Jain, and I'm calling. I'm speaking from IIT Gandhinagar. I'll take you there in just a minute with my slides. But I really want to thank all the organizers, especially Neil, Professor Neil Dhara, who basically in one of these chai conversations convinced us that we should write a paper, and then of course Jay Thakkar, who's in the conference right there, and he's going to present half the talk. And so essentially two of them just spent night and basically wrote this paper, and thank you for accepting this, calling us here to share some of the things that we thought are important, especially for these times when we are talking about engagement over virtual. Times are different. It's very hard to get the engagement. I think I don't know, and maybe this is a question. We also have this I hope we will ask you this question, but in these engagement times, we had this very interesting um, uh, story that I thought I'll share with you. I don't know how many of you have, and it's a very particular, interesting story which we found working with some of our teachers of computer science over the last 5-6 months since the lockdown started. So, I'm going to tell you a trick of how to get out of a workshop in the most coolest way, and you will not look bad. So, everybody, please carry a huge water bottle with you whenever you go to a workshop or a talk or a conference or whatever. And that, theoretically, it works better when you're live, face to face. And so the reason it works is because, if you have a large water bottle, you get two reasons to get out of the boring talk. One is, you have an excuse to fill your water bottle and you get out. And of course, if you drink a lot of water, you have to go to, the restroom for a break. So those are two reasons you can, periodically use that. And I thought one of our teachers told us in this workshop that, that what we were conducting, that we did not have to use this trick. So I thought I'll start with that. So thank you so much for calling me here. And what I'm going to do today in the 10 minutes, 15 minutes that I have is to share with you some interesting things that we have, interesting stories and interesting experiences. This is not talk where I'm going to give you some gyan, but I'm going to share with you some stories and very simple two questions that I two sort of rules for the talk is, please try to see if you can participate with all your attention. भाग लीजिएगा, और भाग लीजिए मतलब दरवाजा खोलकर भागेंगे नहीं. Please participate. And I might also sometimes slip in Hindi, given that Hindi is my mother tongue. So please pardon me for that, and you can remind me and I can translate in English. But when जब दिल की बात करनी होती है तो मातृभाषा में ही निकलती है. अगर आप किसी को बहुत ज्यादा गुस्सा आ रहा है तो कल्पना करिए इंग्लिश में बात करेंगे तो मजा नहीं आएगा. So दिल की बात नहीं निकलेगी. So if I'm going to talk to you from my heart and talk, give you some stories, I might slip in Hindi, and if I do that, please remind me. I will be happy to translate it back in English. So thank you so much for calling me here. My name is Manish Jain. I'm calling from IIT Gandhinagar. Let me change my slides and show you this. From this beautiful campus in IIT Gandhinagar, where we run this lab called Center for Creative Learning, where the goal is to bring back that gleam in the eyes, to make, this is our lab. This is also our lab, and I will stop here with this question and bring you back and take you to item pool. The goal of this lab is to create content which can make learning engaging and inspiring. Absolutely. The only thing that we do here in the lab 24 hours with 10 of our colleagues is to create content which can bring back that gleam in the eyes, make you fall in love with the subject. And with that, I will ask you to go to your internet and ask this question, which will come on your screen. So please go to itempool.com/ccl/live, where you will see this question that should be coming on your screen. What kind of marriage do you have with computer science? I thought this is an ice-breaking question. I want all of you who are here, all the participants to...
Mr. Manish, you haven't shared your screen, I guess.
The screen should be shared. It is there. I can see myself.
So
you are seen, but your screen is not shared.
So I think the item is overlaid on Manish's video, and I think when he needs to, he will switch to the screen. So I think
so I can show myself and I can show the question, and I'm doing this live, sitting behind. See,
just spotlight his video, and I think
that's it. All you need to do is spotlight the video. There is no need for screen. So we have this interesting technology that we use. Yesterday, Neil and I were discussing about this. So you can go also on itempool.com/ccl/live or go to our channel, and this is being broadcasted live. Also, you can see it there. I still do not see a lot of answers. We would really request all of you to come and share your answers. itempool.com/ccl/live. What kind of marriage do you have with computer science? It'll be nice to sort of, look at that. Oh, ek answer, of course. See, the good thing about this technology is that, I can interact with you live. You're giving these answers. I'm seeing it live. The first answer is 18 people are giving that answer. I can only hope that that is the love marriage answer, but we'll see. Let's look at the answers, and if we can, Gaurav, in just a minute, let's look at the answers, and with that we will start. Okay, let's look at the answers. 20, 30, 30, 35 people have given us the answers. All right. Wonderful. All the answers are right answers. Of course, the first one is love marriage, 23 people. And then, some of them are saying arranged marriage. I thought I will, interesting. 3 people are divorced, and, 4 of them are not interested in the subject, but more in the package. I thought I wanted to, not to say anything about it, but we find it interesting whenever we are working with teachers and students and, all of that. We would like to sort of, the whole goal of the lab and the work that we do is to see how we can make the content engaging and inspiring. It is particularly important in this scenario where we are doing stuff online. I have no idea whether the students are listening to me or not. They will conveniently say, oh sir, bandwidth kharab hai, barish ho gayi, internet kharab ho gaya, and conveniently there is no way. And so the only answer that I have is to make my content absolutely engaging and inspiring. It was required pre-virtual, but with the virtual thing, it has become even more relevant. And what we did was, and accidentally we, fell upon this strategy of these 3 things. And I'm going to share those 3 things with you. And in the end, also summarize these 3 things that we thought that we have to do for each subject is to, whenever we are talking about a certain subject, we want to create, make the subject boundaries porous, So let me take you to my slides. And with that, there you go. So we started this program called 3030 STEM with that about 3 months ago. And we had an absolutely amazing response for the 13 episodes that we did for this session. We did 13 episodes, season 1. Somebody gave us the idea that you can get a break after season 1. So we did 13 episodes. We had 13 sessions. We had 4 lakh. Let me change my slides. We did 13 sessions. These are all the thumbnails for all these sessions. We had 13 sessions, 4 lakh registrations, 8 million views, and the most kicker was 1 million comments that we had, 60,000 people who submitted homeworks. So never thought that we will get this kind of a response ever to the kind of online program that we're doing. This program was broadcasted live every Sunday for an hour. And I think if I want to summarize, 3 things that we thought we could share with you as to why, we were able to sort of convey what we really wanted to convey. I think the most important thing was that we wanted to convey out of this program was that we are going to unlock the beauty, magic, and mystery of science and math and computer science that is all around us. We are not going to talk about sorting. We are going to play with cards, and in that card, we will do some sorting and understand some. We are not going to talk about force F is equal to ma, but we will start with a cycle and see how a simple cycle shows a mechanical advantage, which is less than 1. It is actually, a cycle is not really a interesting cycle. Or whenever we are talking about computer science, and Jay is going to show this from our lab, when we are going to talk about computer science, I'm going to talk about some of the history and context. Why is it that the computer was invented in the first place? Not to play PUBG, of course, or other things. The first computer was invented to break the code of this machine called the Enigma machine. I am very happy and proud to say that this machine, in my opinion, as far as I know, is the only machine, real physical machine that exists in India, in our lab, in IIT Gandhinagar. It took us about 3 months to make this machine, real physical machine. Let me take you to show you the the picture of this machine. This was about 3 years ago that we made this machine. This machine is called the Enigma machine, of course, with this episode, Science of Computing, and we had lots of people, give us answers for this machine. So when I'm talking about 3030 STEM, this program called 3030 STEM, which we broadcasted live, and we had absolutely tremendous response. We could never ever believe. Some people ask us, what was the reason why you called it 3030? Interestingly, the day we coined the name, Neil was there in that conversation. The number of subscribers we had that day was 3030, exactly 3030. And by the end of the program, we had 160,000 subscribers. And I think there were some lessons for us. It is absolutely important to make the content engaging and inspiring, but I think we learned 3 lessons, and I'm going to share those 3 lessons with you in just a minute. And those 3 things were, you can make the content engaging, and how do you do that? I think the first thing that we thought, and we thought we'll share with you, is to see how we can break the subject boundaries. When somebody is digging deep, and miners do that, when they go dig deep in a hole, they will also dig these side holes from which they can get the oxygen. So if I'm talking about computer science, I also want to talk about the history. I also want to talk about the context. I also want to talk about whether it is beneficial for me to even do this or not. What is the larger purpose of the technology that I'm working on, and things like that, and I can decide how much of that to bring, how much of the subject boundary should I make porous first. The second thing that I'm going to do is to create a narrative or a story around the whole thing. You might have seen this film called Three Idiots, and this guy who wrote the book is great, right? He wrote this book, Chetan Bhagat. I forget the name of the book. I have not read it. But the person who actually wrote the screenplay, put all the humor, humor and this and that. A good friend of mine, Sudarshan from IT Roper, he says this, that you have to add nav rasas, and I don't think she added nav rasas. We probably added 1 or 2 rasas. We wanted to make sure that there is something in it for every single person. We were audience inappropriate in some sense, right? Somebody asked us, who did you create this program for? And we said, we created for inappropriate audience. And it's a pun on words, but what we are trying to say is there was something in it for every single person, for a 3-year-old who were watching. And in fact, the feedback that we got for those programs, I'm going to show you in just a minute. Right here, somebody is saying that yes program ki hame Ramayana प्रतीक्षा रामायण सीरियल के जैसे रहती है, and these are some of our teachers who were saying this. लगता है इस वीडियो को निकालने का ऑर्डर दिया गया था, लेकिन लगता है इस बार सरकार ने कुछ अच्छा काम करा है. This program is like a जीवन रक्षक घोल. NCERT टेक्स्ट बुक कमेटी में हमें डाल देना चाहिए, and feedback, things like that. Reasoning and research, this is from and the best thing was that the reach that we had with this program was phenomenal. Every single state in India we had viewers from. Registrations, 4 lakh registrations from every single state except I think Lakshadweep. We missed on that. So that was the idea. And if I were to summarize, what is it that we did in just 1 slide? It is right there. This is something that we tried to do. The core of this program, the core of what we did was our activities. Absolutely amazing, interesting activities, whether it is cards, whether it is a cycle, whether it's vegetables. The most popular episode of 3030 STEM, and people who really liked that, I think we had about 2.5 lakh views, was looking for a sine wave in a cucumber. Or magically looking at the peel of a cucumber and seeing how the pie vanishes. If I have time, I would really like to show you that. You remember, if you take a cucumber, normally you take a cucumber and make a slant cut, you see an ellipse. But the most magical thing is if you take the peel off, it's a sine wave. In fact, 1 minus cosine of x. And if you cut that, you take the area of that peel, it is pi. But if you take half that peel, the pi magically disappears, even though it is circular and curves around the whole cylinder. Some of the most interesting things that we did was in this, and so what we are trying to say is this: the heart of what we did in 30SEM was this absolutely engaging and inspiring activities. And then around that was this story or the narrative that we tried to build around. This is, I would call the screenplay or navarasa or whatever, humor, story, context, all of that. Of course, what we did was also chose a decision that we made, that we're going to do this program in Hindi. There were a couple of reasons. One, of course, we wanted to convey that interesting things can also happen in Hindi. It doesn't have to be English. Most interesting content on the internet, if it is related to STEM, science or technology, engineering, mathematics, or computer science, is largely in English. And we wanted to convey that acha kaam Hindi mein bhi kar sakte hain. And we also wanted to make sure that this Hindi belt, which sort of feels let down, gets something very engaging and inspiring. And that was one of the big things, one decisions that we made. I don't know how, we decided upon that, but interestingly, we did that. And something that we made sure was this live interaction. That this technology itempool.com, using which we can interact live with our live with the audience. You give the answers, we were interacting live. That's a huge the feedback that we got from the audience was that these 6 and 7 questions that you give on, and the way you can think about all of this is also, if you go look at these episodes, by the way, those episodes, if you want to see, just Google 3030 STEM and you should be able to see all of those episodes. The feedback that we got from all our audience was that, and you can see it in the answers. If you go, you can also, do these questions and answers now. Even when the episodes are not live, they are on YouTube. The answers to all our questions, these were very non-intuitive things. And so you can game this thing by saying, I'm going to give you the most non-intuitive, non-obvious answer, and that will be the right answer. The point I'm trying to make is that the questions that we gave were absolutely, made you really think. Absolutely made you think. And then each episode was followed by, let me take you to the slide. Each episode was followed by a homework. And this homework was, a link to this homework was given in the description. So in some sense, and this had about 8 to 10 problems. Related to the episode, 8 to 10 things related to the episode, but not really, let me see if I can get my iPad here. No, I can't. Related to the episode, but not, but it would really make you think for weeks. The kind of problems that we give will make you think for a week. For instance, if you imagine you have a cycle, or let me show you this beautiful trick, because all of you are related to computer science. Let me just do this trick with you. This is the kind of things that we were doing, in 3030 STEM. I'm just trying to find my one of my sticks, if I can get it fell down somewhere. Yeah. Okay, so what I'm going to do is, by the way, I don't know if I did that. Let me show you this. Take a minute, take half a minute, if I can say break, and show you this absolutely amazing thing that we did in our lab. Where is this ACM? Oh, there you go. And for that, I will start this film. Please go to, this film will start just in a minute. I hope you can see this film. Okay, let me start with this again.
Sir, your voice is not coming. I believe it's, yeah.
Yeah, so this is what we made for ACM. This is A, this is C, this is M. This is a single object ACM. ACM comes out of a 2D paper and becomes an object, and it of course fits in all these 3 things. And our colleague Tapas made this. This is my ACNM. It will fit exactly in all these 3 letters. We were really inspired to do this based on the work done by Eric Demain. And I'm going to show you how compute can also come out of paper. And let me just do that activity right here with you, and I'll show you card tricks and then take you somewhere else. So we were really inspired by this, this person called Eric Demain, who is interestingly the youngest professor of math. Who is the youngest professor of math. He's a professor of math and computer science at MIT, and he never went to school. School kabhi nahi gaye. So teacher, and he and his dad would go around the country in Canada and do this lot of activities with paper. And then when he finished, when he was about 12, 14, 16, 17 maybe, whatever, he decided to, less actually, of course. By the time he was 20, he was a professor at MIT. I don't know when, but he decided to do his undergrad directly. सीधे college में चला गया. वहाँ पर किसी ने नहीं पूछा कि पुरानी degree 12वीं का certificate दिखाओ. So he went and did his undergrad, then he did his PhD, and then immediately MIT asked him to come and teach at MIT. Nobody asked him, show me the class 12 certificate, because he didn't have any. And he absolutely interestingly made this for those students who are here. Let me show you what he did, which really inspired us. I will just take a minute in my overhead and show you. What he did was he proved that if you have any closed polygon or closed shape, I'm trying to make an elephant here, and sorry about this, because I think I have made a 3-legged elephant. Nonetheless, it solves the problem. It doesn't matter. 3, my hati is not good. But what he showed and proved, that if I have this elephant and if I have to cut it out with a scissor, I can go here, then up like this, top, and this like all of that, and then room by things. Except what I can do, I can fold the paper, if it's a closed figure, in such a way that this whole object comes out of paper in a single cut in one direction. एक बार कैंची चलाएंगे एक दिशा में और पूरा सब कुछ बाहर आ जाएगा. This is the algorithm that he devised, and we extended his algorithm to do this for all letters of the alphabet. And so I have this compute in my hand, and I'm going to move this कैंची, this scissor, in a single cut in one direction. All right, right in front of you, and let's see what happens. I think compute will come out of 2D paper. This is a little thick, so let's see what happens. And there you go, the letters are coming out, and this is the rest of the paper that is down. I will take you here on my overhead and show you what happened. Overhead, these are 7 letters that I have right here. Let's open them up one by one and see what happened. Okay, so this is my first letter. Of course, I didn't cut it exactly on the line, but let's see. So this is my O of compute. This is M of compute. All right, this is M of compute. Oh, C of compute. Sorry about that. C of compute. And I think one of them might have gotten P of compute. This is E of compute. All right. And this is single cut compute. Single cut compute. This I think is T of compute. All right. This is P of compute. And we will have Jay take you to the lab and show you a few things. I'll just show you another activity, the card activity. Oh, this is U. I'm sorry. P, U, C, O, and what? This must be the M, which got cut badly right here. So let me see if I can salvage it a little bit. Yeah, this got messed up, but you have everything else except the M. C-O-M-P-U-T-E. Compute comes out of paper, right here. So this is a single cut compute. Now, this is what inspired us. Single cut compute. So we did single cut ACM and single cut compute, and the whole goal of all of these things is to see, and it's a beautiful algorithm to sort of see how I can fold a paper in such a way that with a single cut the whole letter comes out, no matter which, and we took this algorithm and did this for all letters of alphabet. So you can potentially write all your names, the name of your college, the name of yourself or whatever, and you can become single cut. In fact, interestingly, in Jay's, my colleague Jay, when he was getting married, we gave him a single cut, Jay weds Shilpa, this whole sheet of paper, you do single cut and it comes out. All right. So like I said, the whole goal that we were trying to do, the whole deal of what we try to do in this lab is to create this content. We have created 200 such activities out of MDF, out of wood, out of these toys, thousands of activities, games, stories which can bring back the joy in the curriculum. So let me just do this simple thing. I have these pack of cards right in front. I have these 26 English letters, right? English alphabet, 26 cards right here in my hand, and these have holes. And let me see if I have to let me take you to overhead. That is better. So I have these cards with me, and I can, you see they are not sorted. They are not in order. And if I have to do with, by brute force, I will first find A kahan bhag gaya? Oh, A nahi dikha. Let me just see if I can find my A. A is not to be found. Maybe A is missing. So, oh, there you go. So I get A, keep it here. Then I do B, and so on and so forth. It is very clumsy, except what I will do right now is just to do a very simple, cute trick. And what I have here is I will do, and let me put this A back in the middle somewhere. Okay. So what I'll do is I have these 5 holes. I put this thing in my, a wire inside, and pull this out. Okay, and keep it here. And then I do the same thing for the next hole. Put this in and take this out, put it here, then do it for the third one, third hole, same thing. I hope you can see what is going on. There's no cheating. And 3, and then I do this for the fourth hole. Fourth hole, and then I do the same thing for my 5th hole, and hopefully we look at the results. Okay. All right, let's see what happens. There you go. I have A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H. Oh, X. I think 2 of my cards are missing, but nonetheless, these are sorted. These are all in order. And the reason that happened, or the reason it worked, is absolutely wonderful. What we did was we had these 5 holes right here, you see, and these holes were of 2 type. And so if I have 26 cards, I'm basically trying to sort, and this is a little different version of Radix sort, except what is happening is, and if you're trying to find out why it worked, the answer go figure out. But if I have to sort of summarize that in just a minute, it is basically when I put this thing here in the smallest hole, I am sorting the first the first digit relatively. So I'm sorting the card 0, 1 relatively, 2, 3 relatively, similarly things like that. But which means that 0, 1 relatively are sorted. 0 will always be before 1 because 0 is the one which has no hole. So I pull it out. And 1 is the one, this is empty. So 0 will always be before 1, 2 will always be before 3, and so on and so forth. I mean, 0 and 2 might be before 1 because, 1 can be at the back, but 0, 1 is relatively sorted in the first go. In the second go, the 2 bits are relatively sorted, which means 0, 1, 2, 3 is relatively sorted. And similarly, 4, 5, 6, 7 is relatively with 3 and like so on and so forth. And the last one, of course, all the bits will get sorted. So please try playing with this. And then what we did was we extended it. We said, why have 5 holes? Why not just 3 holes? And 3 different kind. In fact, you see here, we have 3 different kind of holes. This hole is completely done. This has a small opening, and this has full opening. And when we did this activity, we had about thousands of people across the country sending us the results. And with 3 holes also you can sort it. Now this, if I say, is some sort of, I'm using some sort of binary here to sort this. This one, I'm using some sort of ternary. And in fact, imagine, you have, similarly, if you had, let's say, you do this based on quaternary, if and you can have, and the number of times you need to put this stick in is also, you can figure that out, base log. So log of 3 here, if I have to do, I have to put my stick 5 times. Here I'm doing each hole but 2 times, so 6. So in 4 I have to do 3 times log 4, things like that. So I can basically design my card game and show Radix sort by doing this activity using either 5 holes or 3 holes or 2 holes, or if I have 52 cards and I have 52 different kind of holes, I can use just a single hole itself. So that is interesting. Interestingly, while doing this episode, we realized that Hindi alphabets are 52 and English is 26. So Hindi is exactly double the number of alphabets per and if you use 4, you can do all of that sorting with 3 holes in base 4, 4 holes in base 3, and 6 holes in base 2. So absolutely, please try this activity on your own. Please have these cards, and if you need some help, send us an email. Send us an email, cli@iitgn.ac.in. cli@iitgn.ac.in. Things that we would want to. So we have done absolutely amazing toys in our lab. Jay, I'm just going to transfer to you in just a minute. Let me show you one interesting activity. Simple thing, yet very interesting. I have these cubes. Each of this cube has 4 colors. 4 colors. Which means some of the colors will be repeated on the faces. And your goal is to have these 4 cubes, randomly 4 colors on 4 cubes, put them one on top of the other, such that all 4 sides have 4 different colors. So, of course, this is not right. You have to bring the blue here, and you have to bring the red. So this is done. This is done. This side is done. However, this side is not done. And this side also is not done. And the 4th side is also not done. So what sort of algorithm, what sort of process you will design or create, and a very interesting graph theory problem. So if I'm going to do that, I might as well start with this. That brings something physical. Remember 3 things that I was saying: make the subject boundaries porous. Second, give them something that they can relate to, touch, feel. Give them things from the regular life cycle that I see every single day. I'm going to use that as a context, as something to bring the attention together, to get you involved. And then I'm going to take these tangents and talk about whatever else that I have to talk about. I will talk about mechanical advantage of a cycle being less than 1, which means that cycle actually is not a machine. You need to put more force to move. You have to design a cycle where mechanical advantage is greater than, which is real definition of a machine. For those who have not, please go watch this episode on what is a machine, 30-30 STEM, or watch the movie 3 Idiots, where this guy says what is the definition of a machine. Anything that makes the ye machine hai, zip up machine hai, this, that, whatever. We thought we will add another definition in that machine. One, of course, it makes our work simpler, but it should also be something that helps the humankind.
Thank you, Mr. Manish. Sorry to interrupt. That was an amazing talk, excellent talk. That is, we all enjoyed so many tricks. Let me ask you one thing. If we want to make use of this card trick or any of these things, would it be possible by looking at that site? That is, and another question is, are you having similar tricks for other sorting algorithms also, apart from Radix sort?
Hold on, let me just take you here. Thank you for asking this question, Jay. If you are ready, Jay wanted to show the real machine from the lab. I will just say you can go to this. You can just search for CCL IIT GN Center for Creative Learning, IIT Gandhinagar. Lot of the stuff that we have done is on the email, is on the internet. So on YouTube.
Oh, sir, you need to switch to, yeah.
Yeah, overhead. Oh, not overhead. iPad. CLI@idgn.ac.in. This is the email. This is our website. Website is ccl.iitgn.ac.in. In fact, that is the last slide. If I can, where is that slide? Got missing. Here. So this is our email. This is our channel. This is the 30-30 STEM program. And this is the Facebook. So your question was, what kind of things, other sorting activities? We have done this. There are a couple of other things that we do for, lots of, quite a few things that we do, which are specifically related to computer science. So please go to internet and or our website and see. And of course, we will be very interested to show you a brilliant animation of this Enigma machine. This is something that gets used for recursive backtracking algorithm. You can apply and get the answer, or you can use graph theory. Another trick right here. This is called Up It Up. You use these cubes and you can only roll them in this 8x8 grid such that the bottom thing comes up. This is the bottom. This is the bottom logo. This is the top logo. This is a reminder of an old game that we used to play when we were young, except this is a 3D version of it. You are supposed to just roll this dice and bring the bottom thing up. And the only person to have solved it in 36 moves is either a person called Biren, who is in our security staff. Recursive backtracking algorithm, 36 moves. If you can solve it in less, please let us know.
Thank you.
Jay,
thank you so much. Thank you so much, Mr. Manish.
Yes.
Yeah, I think since we are running late, so unfortunately it was so fast.
Late. I just wanted Jay to just share this Enigma machine with you. Only machine in the whole of India.
Yeah, so I could not turn on my overhead camera, but it's just sitting with my next to my laptop. And what I wanted to show very quickly in 5 seconds also, the visual model of the
camera utha ke paas le ja machine ke.
Absolutely, laptop. Yeah. Sure. So here is the one, if you can see that the 3 rotor. So it's a 3 rotor machine, and with the input and from right hand side, the inputs are coming, all being connected with a wire. Absolutely phenomenal demonstration of mechanical, electrical designs, and of course, and information theory. And the same machine, just to have a visual component into our entire program. This is a single rotor machine, and you can see that the middle one is the rotor one, and of course from left hand side the input are coming, and at the end you can see the reflector and the how the encoding is being done, that can be visualized. And similarly, they have to have a visual component. Just let me conclude the visual model wala part. So here you can see the model of, for example, if you have a cylindrical pill and you wanted to have a cut on top of that. Yeah. So exactly. So let me just run this machine. Run this simulation, and you can see the area how it's getting of the pill is to the exactly the pi. But if you wanted to cut it from, let's say, half of it, the blue portion you see, it's independent of the pi. The visual model I just wanted to share here, and that's it. With let me just conclude.
Thank you so much, Jay Thakkar. So it was an absolutely amazing and awesome session by all 3 of you, Manish, Nildara, and Thakkar, and other colleagues from IIT Gandhinagar. Absolutely fascinating. Thank you so much.
That there is something at 5. So if audience have some questions, Jay will be there at 5 in the breakout thing. And
sure, that will be great. Yeah, there is a lot of interest among the audience. So if you can be there in the breakout session, that will be great. Thank you so much. Now we will move on to the next session by Mr. Viral Shah.
Hello everyone, good morning.
Let me just introduce you. Mr. Viral Shah is currently serving as the head of products, engineering, and international business, TCS iON. He is heading the group which has delivered more than 90 plus product solutions in multi-tenanted architecture hosted on TCS iON Cloud. He is responsible for conceptualization, incubation, architecture, build, and delivering highly scalable products and strategic decision-making on product and cloud strategy. Today, Mr. Viral will be talking on Inside the Next Generation Assessment. Over to Viral.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. I'll just share my screen quickly. Okay, I hope you are able to see my screen.
Yes, yes.
Okay. So good morning, everyone. Great forum, and thank you for inviting me for this session. I'll take next 20-25 minutes to articulate what we are observing in the world of education in international market, what are the trends on learning and assessment, and would be happy to share a lot of information that we gather and the way we are solving some of the problems, very complex problems. If you look at the challenges every teacher and educators are facing today, I'm very sure many of this on this forum, there are many teachers and educators today. I'm very sure that they would all agree to this 6 bullet points that I've put it here. There is a sheer need for balancing the different learning needs of students. When you're in front of students in the classroom, it's much more easier for you to find out a weak student versus a strong student, right? But with all the pandemic, the way things have become digital, it's even becoming more and more difficult for teachers to figure out where she or he needs to put an effort, right? Second is considerable time spent on students' non-learning activities like assessment, marking. I'm very sure we are dealing with 10,000s of teachers, and we are aware that how much load that they are having on terms of assessment and marking, and now continuous assessment and marking is a big activity, and they spend significant time on that. Third is limitation and effectiveness of current way of assessment. Most of the people were very used to working in classroom assessments, and now world has changed, everyone is at home. How do you proctor, how do you ensure that cheating doesn't happen? There are so many questions now appearing that should be considered. Should the home based assessment is fair and secure, should we consider it, etc., right? There are unreliable devices and software options. There are too many options available. People are confused what is right for them, what is fit for them. And respecting expectations from school and institution administrators that you have to conduct everyday class, you have to do assessment, you have to do marking, you have to do engagement with the students, you have to do PTM and many other things, right? And that is another area where most of the educators are struggling in balancing the act. And need adequate professional training for digital upgrade. There are many teachers who are very good in digital technologies, but there are plenty of them are still struggling on the digital side because of complexity of the solutions, how they used to engage in a classroom and how they are able to do that. The one feedback that we are continuously received is a teacher who was very, very good in a content in the thorough in the classroom is still struggling on interacting with the students, and students are losing interest in the way the education is being delivered, right? So everyone is struggling. So we thought that we should present today some of the 10 trends that we are seeing in the international market and the world of education, how some of the people are solving it, or how we have solved some of these problems as TSYS Ion, one of the education product and unit, how we are approaching this problem. So in next few minutes, I'll talk about 10 things which are very important and which are kind of game changer for the world of education. And this is what I'm going to talk today. So if you look at the first one, content has become the king now, because digital content is very important, and you cannot put just textbook or ebooks and say that student, you learn it and come back. You need to bring a lot of gamification to increase the engagement level with the student. If you just give textbook and everything, people are not going to read, even though they were not reading it in when the classrooms were on. At home, it is very remote possibility. So how do we make content very attractive with word of gamification and other things? That is a big area being worked upon right now. Learn by doing and hands-on. There is a significant interest on hands-on, that you don't teach theory, you teach the practicality, right? And you give platforms and tools to the student by which they don't have to struggle on installing a big software on their machine, how the virtualization, VMs, etc. can be offered, and how the hands-on can be ingrained with the entire curriculum and the platform and tool strategy that institution has. Learn from the best. Content aggregation is most important thing. There are many people who are using Google Classroom and many other good technologies, but at the end, if they bought the publisher content like say McGraw-Hill, Wiley, or etc., how do you aggregate the content and give the best of the content to the student is a big challenge. You cannot be uploading content on everyday basis and say download it and read it. That's not going to work. How a platform can be content agnostic or publisher agnostic and offer an aggregated content is very important. Learn anytime, anywhere. Mobility is already there most of the time, but offline is a new norm now because most of the people are struggling with the internet connectivity, bandwidth, their infrastructure is not good. Can the entire learning become offline? It's a big area of research everywhere, which is happening. Fifth one is virtual collaboration. Most of the people think that I'm conducting a synchronous class through Google Meet, Teams, Zoom, etc. But that's actually not collaboration. You're just doing a classroom which is become digital, but not the collaboration. So that is another big area which should be focused by the institution, and I will talk about it. Multimodal assessment. Now, one form of assessment, many people are using Google Forms, etc. for conducting assessment, but you cannot actually judge the candidate based on the outcome of them because MCQ, MSQ assessments may not be the best way to conduct this kind of at-home assessment. And what are the new trends in the market? I will talk about it. Seventh is powering assessments with item bank. There is a sheer need for item bank now. You cannot create assessment every day. Otherwise, your energy will completely go in creating those assessments, and it will be a significant problem in assessing the students on the standard skills. There may be questions which goes out on WhatsApp and people just copy it, etc. How do we solve that problem? And insightful analytics is a big tool that everyone should have it. That just the behavior of how people have performed in assessment is much more important than how much score that they have got it in the assessment. I will talk about some of the points at that time. AIML, I have a significant belief that this is going to revolutionize the way assessments are conducted, and I'll talk about some of the work that we are doing in this. And finally, computer adaptive testing, that every student is not equal. You cannot just put a linear test. How do you move them to adaptive testing is the 10th area. These are the 10 quick things that I thought that I should share today, and what is happening inside TCS Ion, how we are approaching this problem to solve it, and what are the trends in the international market I would like to present. Starting with the first one, learning with gamification. So we have built a cartridge called Game Lab. It's very interesting way of approaching the content. You know that you have a content available. You want to take a test, suppose, right? Instead of giving assessment, formal assessment to the kids, can you give a game to them saying that today you have to play car racing game? And when your car is dashed, a question will pop up, you have to answer. So there will be a significant engagement level. I just gave a very crude example of a kid's game, right? But that game can be a case study, can be, I'm going to a retail store and these are the things on the shelf. What will happen? You can prompt the user with a sheer level of engagement rather than just giving an assessment saying that I'm going to give you a case study today. And after reading that case study, you have to give this 10 questions. Instead of that, can you just convert that into a gamification and create amazing games by which their engagement level, their visuals are so appealing that they are very engaged and they actually do not feel that they are giving the assessment. So this is the way we want to change the way learning and assessments are happening. We want to bring the significant problem solving, creativity, imagination, cognitive skills, and emotional well-being. And they should not be under stress that today is my assessment. Suddenly the teacher is asking me to play a game. The entire context itself is changed, right? And we believe that this is a significant area where we are working on the concept of game lab, and huge number of games have been churned out where teachers can configure the content, and instead of telling this as an assessment, call it as a game that you just have to play a game. And finally, everything at the back end is actually assessment, and you will get the scores and insights and many other things by the student. Second is learn by doing. This is not new. We know a lot of things, HackerEarth, HackerRank, many of the platforms are available today. But can you integrate this with your core tool, core LMS tool, core learning tool, and be cloud ready for offering any kind of hands-on environment to the student? It is not just offering hands-on environment, but making sure that the evaluation of hands-on also is automated. So it is not the teacher has to manually verify the project and they will do it for every student. There are technologies available And you have to integrate with your core learning that, okay, I'm teaching you C++ today. Now you have a hands-on lab on C++. You will be able to write some programs and automatically your scores are embedded in your curriculum itself. No one has to manually do anything. And that is the way world is moving now. Lot of competitions, hackathons. TCS is doing humongous number of hackathons and competition like CodeVita and other thing. And this platform is significant, which has to be integrated with your core learning platform. You cannot look at this as a separate platform that, okay, you want to do hands-on, you go here, you come back. It is a broken journey for the student, right? Students should have one journey. The theory, practical, everything is in assessment, marking, everything is in one single place, right? So we believe in learn by doing, and hands-on is the critical aspect of it. Moving to the third one, content aggregation. There is significant aspect of integrating content that, if assume that I am a student, I like a course in Coursera. I like a course, suppose I want to learn Python. I believe that, oh, one course in Coursera is very good. I came to know that Udemy also has one very good course on Python advanced skills. Can I do it? Assume that someone is offering a very good video. Some professor in MIT has delivered a lecture on Python and it is available in YouTube. Or someone is offering a Python certification. Now look at the student journey today. They have to go to Coursera, give the assessment, give the course, take the course. Go to Udemy, buy the course. Go to YouTube, watch the video. Where is the journey? How college or institution will know that what that guy has done and how is the performance in each of the platform? Today, everything is becoming an island, right? Can we have a system where you can actually integrate all this best in class content platform at one place and give a uniform experience to the student? So you know that this guy has done well in Coursera, but could not do well in the advanced program, which is in Udemy, but he has seen a video and he has completed the certification. This journey is completely broken, and this is what we are trying to say, that you don't need a platform. You need a platform which is agnostic to the content sources, and that is the focus. It should be there, right? And it should have a lot of preloaded games and many other things, increase the engagement and other things. So focus should be on content aggregation and a platform which can give a seamless journey to the learner, and do not ask him to go to 10 different platforms to perform a task, right? Because the teachers also will not have an ability to see what's happening on the on each of the platform, because you just have to listen to them what they have done, but you have no way to verify whether they have done it and what they have done. So content aggregation is another big trend that we are seeing it in the market, and which should be the way forward for every education institution. Moving on, learn anytime, anywhere is already a norm. With pandemic, everyone is learning at home, on tabs, on mobile, etc. But the new way which is being done now, everyone has realized that bandwidth is not reliable. There are significant issues in bandwidth fluctuation. If you're giving an assessment, power outage happens, what will happen? So enabling offline learning and assessment is a very key area now. And how the different content can be played in offline mode without publishers constraint on whether my content will be stolen, etc. All this thing needs to be worked out. We are working on this topic significantly, and we have a device called TCS on Paper, which actually can deliver the learning and assessment in a fully offline mode, but continuously capturing the video streams, doing the AI ML analytics, and many more things. So this is another big trend that we are seeing. Mobility is already there in most of the platform, but can it be delivered offline? Because this is a very important area now. Many students are at their village, they don't have infrastructure. We have to factor them. It has to be inclusive learning and assessment. You cannot say that unless you have a great system in place, I cannot impart the learning. That is not possible. So this is another big area. We are seeing a humongous trends on this side also. We are also working very hard to make sure that systems and everything is available in offline. Moving to the fifth one, we already know that most of the institutions have taken this off-the-shelf products, which are chat solutions or like a video conferencing solutions or traditional content delivery platform. We know that these are not working out. Yes, it is a short-term arrangement that everyone is going on a delivering a synchronous class on a existing platform, but that's not going to work out. They know that it is disconnected, broken system. It has no connectivity with your LMS. What is being done in the classroom has no update in your LMS, and everyone is struggling and juggling around multiple things. People use WhatsApp to give the question paper, etc. Is it right way, right? But people have no choices because there are no platforms available which can give them. And hence we want to solve this problem as a holistic manner, that you have varied classroom collaborations like you are teaching in a classroom. You may want to start a debate, you want to start a quiz, survey, everything should be available off the shelf in the platform. And you should not feel that you are in just a classroom and now you are coming back to do something else. Academic structure for Live Connect is very important, that subject, syllabus and schedule all should be embedded in one thing. It is just one click to open up a synchronous learning tool or video conferencing tool to connect a synchronous class, but that cannot be the only enabler for you, right? Today that becomes an LMS, which is not right, because whatever you're doing, you are capturing the session, lecture, etc. But how you're making it available to LMS, what performance has been done by the student during the classroom, you have no way to record it, right? So these are the problems that we are facing and we are trying to solve it. Subject level lecture repository is very important. Now, most of the lectures are digital, right? If some faculty has not come in one of the lecture, why can't you play the similar session done by the another faculty in that session? Because at the end, most of the sessions are one way. If you open up student interaction during the session, teachers are not able to teach them, right? So there are many different aspects of the platform that needs to be taken care. And rapid setup with custom data, most of the traditional content pro delivery platforms are very complex to set up and do so many things, right? Configurable administration on the cloud, people should have very good analytics on what is happening. Today, I can tell you, if you ask a dean or a principal in a school, they have absolutely no clue on what is happening inside the classroom because they are using all the video conferencing tools. Even teachers are struggling to conduct the class. Where is the analytics? Where is the insight that which student is not doing good in a classroom? It is all about just someone subjectively, qualitatively giving the input, right? But there is no system by which you can actually see that what is happening in the classroom. And you just set up a Google form based assessment, and based on that, everyone is 10 out of 10 now, right? So how do you differentiate who needs help from the teacher, etc.? So we believe that virtual collaboration platform is the way forward. And TCS Ion has invested significantly on this learning platform for so many years, and it is doing wonderful job in the market. And that is the way you should solve the problem, rather than just acquiring one video conferencing software and say that this is my LMS, I'm able to do the digital class. That is not right. Moving on to the sixth one, which is very important, multimodal assessment. Computer-based exams are age-old. We know that many of these exams are happening. Now the trend is, can you do assessment without internet? And that is the way we are significantly focusing now. And when you do it, can it be done at home in a remote proctored manner? In offline mode, can you capture the videos, and can those videos can be analyzed by AI ML later on? That is the entire format of the assessment. Which a lot of practical exams are now coming up. Vivas are now being done on a synchronous platform, but actually those are not the platforms. Those are just the video conferencing tools. There has to be an assessment engine which should support the practical exams, video-based exams, speaking test, etc. And it should be integrated with your LMS system, because today teachers are spending humongous time because they have to set up a Zoom meeting or a Teams meeting to conduct this practical exam. They have to note the answers in a piece of paper or Excel sheet, finally upload it in a Google Drive, someone will consolidate. Just imagine how much administrative overhead that you are having right now. Significant. And that is where people are frustrated. They are not able to focus on the teaching, core teaching, which is their skill, right? But because of many of the tools not working together, not integrated with core LMS, many of them do not have LMSs also, right? So there, everything is Excel sheet and the results are declared. Anyone can temper the result. Lot of problems that we are seeing. So multimodal assessment, you should not have an assessment engine which is just able to deliver one class of exam. There are many new ways of assessments have come, and your engine should be able to cater to that, should be integratable with the LMS that you have, right? So that management overhead or administrative overhead can be completely eliminated for the teachers. This is the way it should be done. Moving on to the assessment. Now there is a sheer need for building a question bank. No one focused on this area before pandemic hit, right? Now assume that you have 10 teachers who are teaching computer network subject. All 10 teachers can actually collaborate and create a question bank. And on the day of exam, you will not even know that whose question paper has come for the actual exam. Today, every teacher, because of using the tools like Google Forms, etc., you are just creating the questions on the fly, creating the assessment. You look at the classes where everyone is giving the different assessments and every teacher is putting effort on that. Why can't you create a question bank, very good question bank? On the day of exam, if I want to conduct a say computer networks test today, I will just click on it. System will give me the paper and I can conduct an assessment. Even I don't know that what questions are being asked in that. Students do not know, and there is a parity in all the teachers saying that it is a fair and secure assessment. So content authoring engine is the product from TCS, which is a question banking software. This is very extensively used now by education institutions because they know that they cannot create just-in-time assessments. And even for the formative and summative assessment also, you need to have this because otherwise one teacher who sets up the paper, his or her students are benefited, others are not, right? When the other college does it, their students are benefited, other colleges are not. So you have to eliminate this layer now and have a question bank, global question bank by which you can actually create a fair and secure assessment. So this is another area which is very significantly, and analytics is most important aspect. You cannot now just see the score and see that, oh, this guy did very well because he got 10 out of 10. Assume that I gave an examination and I got 90 out of 100. Systematically, I am a great student. But what if the system tells you that, look, Viral gave examination, he got 90 out of 100, which is great. But out of this 90, last 5 minutes, he attempted 30 questions and by fluke, all 30 are right. Otherwise, he would have got 65 marks or 55 marks. Just imagine this analytics is good enough for teacher to gauge whether 90 is important or that 55 is important. And this is what is lacking in most of the places. Everyone is just going behind the score that you got 10 out of 10. I want to really ask teachers, you will not find any student which will be lesser than 80% marks now in nowadays. There is WhatsApp to do the cheating. There is Facebook to do cheating. There are many ways, innovative ways, even students can do much more than that. But just imagine if engine gives you this kind of insights, it can be gold insights. And this is where the entire assessment is going to move to. Rather than looking at the score, the behavior during the assessment is very important. I'll give you another example. Assume that I'm giving an assessment and there was a question which I made it right and the answer was D, right? ABCD options were gave, answer was D. But if assessment engine tells me that, look, he has given answer D, which is correct, but for doing it during the course of examination, he visited A, then saved B, then saved C, then came A, came B, finally gave D. So you know that for this particular question, if Bloom's taxonomy and other meta tagging has been done, you can find out that this child is not good in this particular question. I should not see the score because it is right, but I know that he has struggled during the course of assessment, and this is the area of improvement for this child. This is completely missing today. Right? And this is the way assessments will move and teachers will have to change rather than looking at the score, looking at the behavior during the assessment is very important. For that, the assessment engine has to give every single data point for the student and then only it can happen. And so this is very interesting. Similarly, the items, how you can put the items in this entire thing is also very important because the items will tell you whether you have given the right answers. And for that, again, I'm going back to the question bank, which is very important aspect. That question bank is the way forward where you will actually refine the item, which is tagged as a hard, difficult, or medium, or easy, etc. And lot of theory is available. A lot of analytics is available, item analytics, and that is also the area which is being explored significantly. And this is a prerequisite if you want to go for the adaptive end. Moving to the AI/ML, which is the most talked area, we are doing real good work in AI/ML, and whether it is AI for authentication, AI for deduplication of the question, assume that two professors are giving the question and putting it in the bank, whether both the questions are similar, you cannot just compare the text, right? You have to do AI, which will do the deduplication and find out that these two question looks similar, which one you want to keep it in the bank. Otherwise, you will encounter a scenario that both the questions are asked in the examination. AI for remote proctoring, many of you are aware of it. We have significant technology to do that. And there are many new ways are continuously getting added in the remote proctoring area. AI for test scoring, we are working on OCR, audio test, transcribing, and many other areas of AI to make sure that goodness of pronunciation, English grammar, English evaluation, etc. Many other things can be scored directly through that. So these are the 4 areas significant from AI perspective in the world of education. And in the next subsequent slide, I would like to talk about videolytics, which is video analytics. I believe that video is our new data type. Earlier, we used to work in RDBMS and text and many other things. Yes, those things exist today. But now the new next 10 years is new data types, video, audio, which is voice, and text are the 3 critical data type. If you have expertise and control over this new data type, you can do wonders with the technology. And Videolytics is our platform by which we analyze the video and give you significant insight about what can happen. I thought rather than talking, I'll give you 2 quick 1-minute videos, which will give you aspect of what we are doing and what kind of research that we are doing in the Videolytics field. So this is a significant thing that you can see that how system is detecting. Assume that the student is taking the assessment, and you can see the various moods like angry, again neutral, happy, sad, surprise, fear. So the idea to show you this is, these are the emotions now, which can be captured just by proctoring. We can capture these emotions, and based on this emotion, actually, if you analyze and put the algorithms, you can actually find out malpractices, cheating, paper is difficult, hard, many other things. Without student telling you, you have an ability to find that out. And we are working significantly on this area of emotion analysis. The second area I want to talk about is a on-center assessment. What are the kind of video research that we are doing? Assume that on-center assessment, you are conducting a at-center assessment, high-stake assessment, and you want to track the invigilators, whether the invigilator is actually roaming around in the classroom, or they are gathered at one single place, or they are standing at one candidate to help them. The significant algorithms that we are building right now find out the malpractices based on the CCTV feeds. So if you are doing exam at institution or at home, you have enough probes and techniques and algorithms available to make sure that you can really figure out the candidate experience, candidate behavior, how they are feeling during the exam. Are they doing cheating? There are many things that you can easily do that. So this is very important aspect of proctoring. People keep talking about proctoring, but this is true proctoring. That how you analyze the feeds, video feeds, and come back with an analysis and conclude the analytics rather than who is doing the cheating, whether proctors are helping the student, etc. Significant number of things can be churned out. So I thought I'll just show you these 2 videos. This is not limited to these 2 videos. In fact, several things can be made available. I'm going on my last slide. Computer adaptive testing is another big hot area nowadays because every student is different. How do you measure ability for the student? How do you calibrate the items? And what is critical in adaptive engine is, it is not that everyone is safe, right? You actually want to find out the ability of the student by throwing them questions one after another, and then you will be able to gauge the ability of the student, right? So this is another big area which we are seeing a trend, and ION also is investing significantly on computer adaptive testing with statisticians, psychometricians, item calibration experts, pre-testing experts. Huge investment is being made to make sure that we have a great engine for adaptive testing, because over the period of time when you will be tired of cheating, everyone getting 10 out of 10, WhatsApp, Facebook, and other handles to make sure that all your papers are out, this is the only saving grace that you will have in the future. And along with analytics that I mentioned to you, and the proctoring, new techniques and new avatar of Videolytics is going to help. So that's it from my side. And the last slide that I want to put it, saying that the entire world is moving towards every child is unique. Everyone has a different way of learning. Someone learns at their own pace. Someone learns by interacting. Someone learns by doing. Someone learns while having fun. Someone learns traditionally in a classroom, but with a twist of blended classroom. They want to share their learning, they want to assess, and they want to be job ready. So this is a summary of what we are doing in the area of learning and assessment. And TCS Ion Platforms digital learning, digital assessment encompasses this philosophy to make sure that we give fair and secure learning and it is inclusive for everyone. That's it from my side. I've reached my 30 minutes. Thank you, and open for any question.
Thank you, Viral, for that informative session. We have a few questions here. When you are talking about all these kind of high-tech features, including all those features, will the product be economical for all the institutes to buy, or will the cost be prohibitive? Please share your views.
Absolutely. So very good question. Okay, so I will just share some of the numbers. You are today already buying some of the video conferencing software, right? But at the end, you are actually asking teachers to do lot more work than they used to do it in a classroom. So at the end, either you are actually loading teachers and saying that you do more work, or better you invest in the technology. And by the way, these tools and technologies are not so expensive. These are all AI ML. Once the machine algorithms are written, you don't have to put investment in doing many more things, right? So these are not so costly software. But yes, if you want to really want your teachers to focus on the curriculum, content, and teaching, you need to invest. Otherwise, actually, you are increasing the human load and not leveraging the technology which is already available. Can do the work of teacher is what my answer is.
I would ask you from my personal experience that already after this pandemic, we have invested on getting everyone this kind of video camera and getting this microphone and then Panopto videos. So much has been invested. And when we bought Panopto, Panopto was integrated with our LMS Moodle. And Moodle has this option of setting question banks, and you can also have randomized things. So you said question bank has a unique feature here, but we are already doing that sort of taking from multiple question banks and shuffling the questions and shuffling the options. And apart from this, there is a layer, Microsoft Teams or Zoom. And for collaborative kind of things, we are using breakout rooms. So it is a little difficult to see what more, one more thing coming in. Will that help, or will that be another obstacle? Can you throw light on?
So you beautifully articulated. You said that you have Moodle, okay, which is a free tool available for the education institutions. Moodle already has a question bank feature, right? And you said that you have already invested in Zoom or Teams kind of video conferencing software. Now I just want to ask you, you're conducting your session on Zoom, right? Does Zoom give you a capability to capture emotions, what happened to the candidate, how much time they spent, and is it integrated with your Moodle? The answer is no. Yes, you are able to conduct a synchronous session, but the outcome of that session, which usually teacher, when she used to be in a classroom, she knows that which students are good in a classroom and they recognize them by name, right? Now, in this case, yes, Zoom session is over. Yes, video recording is also over. How many people are looking at that video recording? The inputs are not coming back to your LMS. You said you have a question bank. Do you have an ability to buy the questions and open it to many people who can contribute to the question bank and not only your teachers and faculties? The answer is no. You have to open that Moodle interface to many more people to do that, right? There are many aspects of question bank. When you put a question, it ideally cannot be teachers saying that it is a hard, easy or medium question. There is a big science of pre-testing, right? If you want to really go and evaluate whether this question is easy or difficult, you cannot actually do it just by putting a question and asking in the assessment. You have to do a lot of analysis of item analytics, it is called as, where you will get the data back. You will understand that how many people could do it right, wrong. Based on that, there is a 2PL, 3PL theories available to see whether item calibration is right or not, right? There are many things which are not available in those kind of question banks. Even in question bank, you have to manually enter all the question. Can you create a meta question and create lakhs of question generated by the system? These are not the tools and techniques available in many of these platforms. You have to go with the sophisticated platforms, right? Yes, but you can use it But at the end, you ask your teacher whether it has reduced the time or increased the time. The answer would be it has increased the time for them.
Yeah, I agree. But I have to wait and see that one more thing coming in, will that increase their cognitive load or lessen their cognitive load? Yeah, we will wait and see. But in the meanwhile, how are you handling this ethical issues while proctoring, privacy issues and other issues? How is TCS handling that?
Absolutely. So very good question. So this is still, I would not say that we have addressed it fully. TCS can only provide a platform. The usage of the platform, etc., is with the institution, right? Most of the institution, we have a GDPR platform by which you can take the consent of the student, and unless the student gives the consent for videos or photograph capture, etc., you cannot really do the proctoring for them. So consent and many other recommendations given by GDPR laws in Europe are being incorporated in our platform. And you can be compliant, but yes, if student doesn't wish to do it, you can't force them. So from that perspective, we have not solved that problem. But if institution believes that student, if they are studying, they have to agree to this, then absolutely all the tools and techniques are available which are GDPR compliant to support that particular thing.
Yeah, I agree that, but with the kind of unstable internet connection in our country, students are actually exploiting that, and they will say that few minutes they will be away from the video and then say that my internet connection broke, and in the meanwhile they will be doing some malpractice.
Absolutely.
So, yeah.
Absolutely. So that is the reason you remember that slide of offline assessment, right? When there is offline assessment, video is on, what they can do now, right? If the internet itself is not required, but their 100% video capture is happening while they are giving the assessment in a completely unintrusive model, is the new way of assessment that we are working on right now. And you're absolutely right. There are multiple reasons, and you have no way to prove whether it was a power failure or it was just a cheating attempt by the student, right? You are not able to differentiate between both of them. And that's the reason we believe that offline assessment to eliminate internet completely, but have the device which can take your video feed completely during the course of assessment, so that there is no way that my power has gone, my internet has gone, nothing, because then it's 100% offline assessment, no internet required, video is captured and analyzed by AIML. It's the way forward we are thinking of the world of assessment.
Yeah, that might be a better kind of a choice, because right now also our faculty are able to assess where there is a cheating, but unless you are able to prove, so you know very well that when everybody is scoring 90% or 100%, you know that they have cheated, but unless you are able to prove it with evidence, so even with all this emotion and other things, I don't know whether that emotion alone will stand as a proof in the university to prove that, so they need to be that is disqualified or something. So it needs to be a much more concrete proof. So
Absolutely.
Hopefully this offline assessment might be a better choice. I'm just guessing. Yeah.
Absolutely. So offline is one, but your point is right. This emotion and posture analysis, eye movement analysis cannot exist in isolation. It has to be supported with the data and the analytics and the way AIML. You see, AIML cannot be the primary source of cheating detection. It has to be supported with a lot of data. In fact, I would say it's a secondary aid, right, to the entire system. One is human proctor, one supported with AI techniques, and one supported with analytics. If you merge all of them, you will be able to come up with a confidence score. We call it as a confidence score for the student, and that will tell you whether actual cheating has happened or not. It cannot be one or other thing which can be looked at in isolation.
What is the regulatory board name followed by TCS? Which one are you following for this privacy ethical issues? What is the thing you are using? Are you using the GDPR laws generally?
GDPR are the laws which are very prevalent in European countries, and that's the strictest norms in the world, right, for data privacy. So we have a very large team focused on the GDPR, and we have created technology for GDPR compliance for every platform and product that we build. It's not something board or anything. It's a law in European countries, right? So GDPR we follow the regulations very carefully and incorporate all the single aspect of consent, data deletion, data masking, and many other aspects. We follow that and make sure that our tools and technologies are compliant to that.
Okay, thank you. So I think there is one another observation also. So because of all these complications in tracking the cheating, so it would be good to have open book exams where the assessment itself can be taken to a higher level where they are officially allowed to open book exams, so that we will not have this difficulty. But of course, in this pandemic scenario, what we have observed is open book essentially becomes open world kind of an exam. So they can refer to anything in the net or anyone. So that becomes a difficulty to tackle compared to traditional open book exams also. So where there is a proctor.
See, I believe more than cheating, guesswork is the biggest enemy. Okay. So cheating is one. See, cheating, you put a difficult question, no one will be able to do that. But what about guesswork? Our biggest problem is guesswork. I gave an example that I got 90 out of 100. And if system tells me in last 5 minutes, 30 questions were attempted and right, actually it's not a form of cheating, right? But it's a form of guesswork. So I believe guesswork is much bigger problem in the assessment, whether it is open book, closed book, secured assessment, everywhere. That is the biggest problem statement in my view. Yeah, cheating is one, but cheating, there are many means in assessment engine that you can try to reduce the cheating significantly. I would give you an example that most of our assessments now that we conduct as a question level timer. So assume that you want to give MCQ question, you give question level timer that this question has to be answered in 45 seconds. Now you already shuffled questions, you shuffled option. If I want to do a cheating on WhatsApp, etc., I will not have any win because I will miss my question if I do that, right? So these are many means. There are many techniques. We have 100+ techniques on. We can talk about 8 hours on assessment cheating, how you can reduce it in the world of assessment. But there are many more areas like guesswork and other things where we should focus on is what my recommendation.
Yeah, thank you very much, Mr. Viral. That was a very nice session. Virtual applause for you. Now we will close that session and go to the next one. Next session is by Mr. Dr. Andrew Thangaraj. I will introduce him now.
Thank you so much.
Okay, so Dr. Andrew Thangaraj, so he did his BTech with IIT Madras, and he did his PhD in electrical engineering from Georgia Institute of Technology. Since October 2011, from the inception of NPTEL, he has been serving as NPTEL coordinator at IIT Madras. He has played a key role in initiating and running NPTEL online courses and certifications. He is currently the National MOOCs coordinator for NPTEL in the SWAYAM project of MHRD. Since May 2020, he has been serving as coordinator for the online diploma and degree programs of IIT Madras. Today, Andrew will be talking on teaching computing at large scale from NPTEL to IIT Madras new online degree. Over to you, Andrew.
Thanks, Chitra, for the nice introduction. I hope everybody can hear me. I also want to thank Viraj and Venkatesh for inviting me, extending this invitation and giving us this opportunity to talk about NPTEL and IITM's online degree. You heard the previous speaker mention so many other platforms. He never mentioned NPTEL, but there are many platforms that are very famous in the world. So we are quite famous in India as well. So we're happy to talk more about it in that context. So given the nature of this conference, I thought I should focus a little bit more on the computer science part of NPTEL, even though the strength of NPTEL is its diversity and the number of courses that we offer. So let's get started. Hope I can switch the slide. So Chitra mentioned that I've been around since the inception of NPTEL. NPTEL is much older than I am. It started in 2003 as a project for just recording videos and putting it up and sending it on TV, etc. And from 2014 onwards is when this MOOCs and online courses and certification started. And of course, I've been involved very heavily in that process. And that also gave a major fillip for NPTEL, increasing the number of courses, engagement, our clientele, the way we interact with the audience, the way we got enmeshed into the system in India, the university system, credit transfer and all that. We're fully funded by MHRD. The 7 older IITs and IISc are involved in this NPTEL project. Just to give you some numbers, the number of YouTube subscribers, site views, etc. are really, really, really strong. One of the strongest in the world. Okay, so what do we do in this certification model since 2014? This is a model that's really been very successful in India. We offer MOOCs, online courses through a portal. Right now, we offer it on swayam.gov.in. We've used our own portal as well. In fact, NPTEL maintains swayam.gov.in today. We've done 2,000 plus courses online in this model. On scale, we offer courses for college students. I mean, we don't do a wide variety for a big audience, but other people also take it, but primarily aimed at college and university education. Okay, so over the past 6 years, we've had 12.5 million plus enrollments. That's a huge number. More than a crore enrollments. People who come and click on the website and join our courses have been very large, and that's of course free, so people do that very easily. And a number of people who, we don't stop there. Most portals sort of stop there. They stop at that point, and that brings in, there was this discussion between Chitra and Viral about cheating and all that. So that brings in so many elements of uncertainty, and any certificate you provide from that, there's this big doubt as to who did it actually, right? So that's a big problem. So we thought to add value and make it relevant to colleges and universities, this innovation of having a proctored in-person exam. In fact, TCS Ion runs our exams today across the country in centers. So you do the online course, and then after that, if you want a certificate, you have to come to an exam center and write the exam, and then you get a certificate. There's a small charge for the certification fee, and then that's for the examination fee, and that's all you pay. And once you pass, you get a nice certificate from one of the IITs or IISc that offered the course, so it has a good reputation. So this process, I think many people here would probably know about this process. It's sort of firmly established today in this country, and a lot of people, lakhs and lakhs of people use this process every semester, and the numbers are only growing. Okay, so this is the NPTEL process. Just to give you the glimpse of what we do. Once again, I said we are in university education. We teach all courses from all disciplines, not just computer science, even though this, this conference is related to computer science. That's one of our huge strengths. In fact, that's why universities and colleges, I think, really like using NPTEL for credit transfer and all that. You can do any course you like. Of course, computer science courses also we do. In fact, that's the largest number. 271 of our courses that we've offered so far are in computer science. Who teaches? The offering institutes are the top institutes in the country. We've been increasing the number of institutes that want to offer courses on NPTEL. We hope to keep doing that. We hope to keep doing that going forward in the future as well. Okay, so that's a very short introduction to how NPTEL works. I think maybe this is repetition for most people in this audience, but I thought I'll quickly set that stage for you. So what I'm going to talk mostly about is computer science courses on NPTEL, the various types of courses, particularly focus on the programming courses, because I think it's interesting to think of various approaches that people take to teach programming. And I want to say something about how successful we've been and also point out the big challenges as well. So a structure of a course offered by NPTEL is like this. So this is just putting it mildly, putting it in a very short way, but usually the structure is like this. So most teachers stick to the structure. Our courses are either 4-week, 8-week, or 12-week long. That corresponds to the 1, 2, 3 credit. In each week, we release video lectures. We have graded objective type assignments. We have discussion forum for raising questions. And we also have programming assignments. So now that's the strength. I think it was repeated from the very beginning in this session that programming assignments have been around for a long while. In our portal also, we have it for all the programming languages that we teach. We set up programming assignments so students get hands-on experience. These are evaluated automatically using test cases, and these are not done proctored. So this is done online without proctoring. I'll make that point later on as well. But it's still, I mean, for the good students who really want to learn, this is a nice opportunity to test their programming hands-on. So this is the structure. So all our programming courses work like this. We give a lot of programming assignments as well. So what are the major programming courses, and what kind of scale are we talking about? How many students take these courses every semester, and what is the way in which this course is structured, what is the aim of the faculty, what kind of students they want to teach, and all that is what I'm going to talk about. I won't go into great detail. There are quite a few other courses that I've skipped, but I thought I should mention these courses because they're very popular. A lot of students do take it, tens of thousands of students take it across the country every semester. So these are the courses I will talk about. So there are largely two classifications one can do. The first is the beginner sort of courses for people who are very new to programming and algorithms and thinking of problem solving with computer for the first time or so. So I would highlight two courses here. One is from Sudarshan Iyengar of IIT Ropar. Manish mentioned his name earlier in his talk. He offers a course called Joy of Computing Using Python, is very popular. And then Professor Anupam Basu from IIT Kharagpur does a course on problem solving through programming in C. So these two are for really beginners. And then there is an intermediate stage where people, after having done the first beginner's course, you can take the next course and sort of get deeper into everything that you would like to know about programming. So maybe more involved problems, more challenging methods, right? So things like that get into the second part. But I should also point out Professor Ranade's course, for instance, is also tuned towards people who start programming. But since it's C++, I thought I should put it in the intermediate category. Okay. All right. So let's just look at the numbers. So what kind of scale are we talking about? So this is Joy of Computing using Python. We've run it 5 times so far. And you can see tens of thousands of students enroll in this So in this course every semester. So it's either 38,000, 40,000, 60,000. Not just enroll, nearly 10,000, 5,000, 8,000 people write the exam for just this one course. And a large fraction of them also get certified, as in they pass the exam. Okay. So you can argue about the efficacy of MOOCs, etc. But this is fairly good. I mean, 10, 12,000 out of 60,000 registering for the exam. That's a dream conversion ratio for many MOOCs, the way it works. And then out of that, a large fraction getting certified also. And Sudarshan uses this very informal, very challenging and very nice style of teaching where he picks up, like Manish was talking about, he picks up a lot of these fun puzzles and actual things that people can touch and feel. And then he introduces algorithms into it, how to do it in Python, etc. He has a very engaging, very just like how Manish spoke earlier, Sudarshan also has those kind of nice facial expressions and engagements that people really like this course. And this is very, very, very popular. I mean, across the country, so many students have learned about computing through this course. And I think full credit to Sudarshan for having put together a nice course. So the next one, the following course is a course which we call Programming Data Structures Algorithms using Python. This is just an 8 weeks course, and Madhavan Mukund, I think I saw him in the audience a little while ago, maybe he's still there. So he offers it semester after semester for us. I think we've offered it some 8 or 9 times, but I'm just showing you the last 5 times. Once again, close to 50,000 people do this course every semester, and a very healthy, large fraction of them register for this exam. And of course, ignore the last July, Jan when we were affected by pandemic. Don't look at it too closely. And you can see about, a smaller fraction of people who write exam get certified compared to Joy of Computing. So this is a more challenging course. Look at the content there. It starts with more involved problems, slightly more abstract, if you will. Not so real and not so physical in some sense, but still very, very engaging and clear and concise and very self-contained teaching. Madhavan's very, very popular for this course. A lot of people get solidly introduced into algorithms and programming through this course. So this course is also very popular. But you can sort of see the contrast of these two courses and why we like these courses as 1-2. You do a Joy of Computing type course, and then you do a PDSA using Python course, and then that's a complete and solid command over the language and the algorithms as well. There is a similar sequence in C. I don't want to go through in great detail. There is this problem solving through programming in C, which Anupam Basu does every semester for us. And then that's followed by, say, a more involved introduction to programming in C, where it's more traditional, and you get into the next stage. So we have tried to do it like this. In fact, for C++, for instance, there are 2 different approaches. One builds on the knowledge of C of the student, maybe a follow-up to the problem solving in C course. There's another course by Professor Biram Ranade, which is a new experiment, I think. So he has a way of teaching this course, which is very interesting. I think for those of you who have not seen it, you should go check out the course on NPTEL. He sort of introduces the computer as an abstract object, what kind of thing it can do, and gets people into thinking about programs in the correct way. And so it's a very interesting idea, and it goes all the way to nice, interesting applications. In fact, there is a cosmological simulation. So it's very interesting that at the end, you can do a real application also. So it's very interestingly put together course, and two different approaches. And we see, I think that there cannot be one approach to learning programming properly. And when you see all these different approaches, I think eventually you become a more complete programmer. So that's been our approach. So if you want to summarize multiple approaches, different philosophies of teaching, so many tens of thousands of students in large scale and high quality have been learning programming. And we do have a fairly robust method of doing exams, but what we really lack, which is a huge challenge. I mean, Viral spoke about so many fancy new things, but this is something we've been asking TCS Ion for the past 6.5 years. Can you give us a solid, robust programming question in the proctored exam as one of the options? I hope they deliver this sometime soon. We've been after them, I don't know, 6.5 years. I've written to Swami several times, I've written to Viral several times. It is just not happening. I think that will give us a solid way to assess ourselves. Is the programming going through? Is the student able to program in a proctored setting properly? So we have so many other ways of testing, but we would really like a proctored solution. That's a huge challenge in front of TCS Ion. Let's see if they take it up and deliver something for us. Now, if you go to more challenging courses, there are more advanced courses. I didn't talk about them that much in detail in this talk. I don't want to go too much into detail here, but supposing you take an app development course, I'll mention this in the context of online degree later. Maybe we want to do more involved assignments, right? More involved collaborative projects. So how do we even think of that? How do we think of setting it up in a scalable format? What kind of questions do we ask? How do we assess those kind of things? Is a huge challenge as well. And we made a couple of attempts, and I should say we were not very happy with the results of those attempts. It didn't come out very cleanly. There's just too many development challenges, and we hope to do a better job going forward on that. And finally, the quality of code is one of those unknowns. Quality of code, and just not just so test cases, evaluating with test cases, that's a huge limitation, isn't it? You can sort of, Madhavan has this way of assessing, efficiency of the code by giving large test cases and setting a timeout, etc. But that still doesn't talk about quality, isn't it? So quality is one vague term. So I hope the CS community, as a group, thinks about these real on-the-ground practical problems that we have, and not just get carried away with AI, ML and all that. So can we solve these kind of real problems that NPTEL can roll out in its courses for tens of thousands of students in large scale?
Andrew, sorry to interrupt. Do you have, are you sharing your screen after the summary slide?
Yes, I have a few more slides to go. Is that okay?
Yeah,
no, I'm still on the summary. I'm still on the summary.
Okay, fine.
Okay, I'm just finishing one part. I'll go to the next part next. Okay. All right, so this sort of summarizes NPTEL's experience in trying to scale up computing education. I didn't talk about any of the other parts of computer science, systems, theory, and all that. In fact, Madhavan offers once again a very nice design and analysis of algorithms course, which is also taken by a lot of people. I don't have time to talk about all those things in detail, but at least for programming, I believe these three challenges are nice for people to think about and come up with solutions for us. Okay, so that ends the first part of my talk. That was about NPTEL. I think I'm doing okay on time. I have about 15-20 minutes. So I'll spend the next 15 minutes talking about this online BSc degree in programming and data science that IIT Madras has rolled out. And maybe you've heard about it, maybe you've not. So let me go through this in some detail. So given the NPTEL experience, we knew that we could tackle this large-scale, high-quality education problem efficiently and nicely and deliver a good quality degree in large scale. So we knew that, and but just me knowing that versus convincing the IIT Madras Senate of something is completely different, isn't it? So this is one, that is the other. So we had to really do a lot of hard work, put our heads together. There was a small committee group of professors who were involved. I've not named them here. The small group is me, Professor Pratap Haridas, who's one of my co-coordinators in this project, Professor G. Venkatesh, and Professor Madhavan Mukund. I would say the four of us spent hours and hours discussing how best to do this. And we've come up with something. And of course, it's getting refined day by day with a larger community, etc. But let me just present how it is that we thought we could do a high quality BSc degree in programming and data science in large scale from a top institute like IIT Madras. So this is the structure. The structure is sort of very flexible, very open, very different type of admission compared to what IIT Madras is famous for letting lakhs of people write and selecting one person. We didn't want to do that. We wanted to have a very open process. So we said anyone who has finished 12th, literally anyone who's finished 12th, whatever their background is, they can get into this course. And we thought, I mean, one of the philosophies, I think G. Venkatesh was very particular about it. He said, anybody can learn computing, anybody can learn programming. They don't need to know, they don't need to have a science, math background. We can teach what is needed, and even to an art student or a commerce student. And we've tried to translate all of that into the structure of this program. So we said, anyone who's finished 12th can come in, and we will have a qualification process, not a ranking process, a qualification process where we will teach 4 weeks of content for the student. And at the end of 4 weeks, we will let them write an exam. And if they pass the exam, they are qualified. We let them in. So it was a very revolutionary way of admitting students. I don't think any other program anywhere in the world does this. People, of course, drop off, but that's a different process. We are admitting or qualifying students in this fashion by testing them out in how well they do in the first 4 weeks of classes. And I'll tell you the results of what happened in the first qualifier soon enough. But what does it get them into? So once they get clear and become qualified, they get into a foundation level. Okay, so this is the level of, we do about 8 courses here where we teach the basics of mathematics, statistics, basics of computing, programming, etc. that's needed for someone to be an app developer and a data scientist at the same time, right? So that's the degree, programming and data science. So that's the foundation, and one can choose to exit at that level. You get a certificate from our Center for Continuing Education at that level. So the first year itself, I would say, is like an extended filter, in some sense. You can take your time, see if you're happy about the foundations, and we charge much lesser for the first year. We charge much lesser for very less for the qualifier. So you can feel free to experiment with the first year and see how well you do. And of course, you pay only for the courses you register for. So you don't have to, lose your fortune or something for trying out this course. So that's why I thought, I think that's a good thing for anybody to try out. Okay. So if you finish your foundation level, you get into the diploma level of courses, and that's where you really pick up the skills needed in the course. I'll talk more in detail about what courses come there. And if you pass one of the 2 sets of courses, you get one diploma from IIT Madras. And that's a diploma from IIT Madras. This is approved by the Senate of IIT Madras. It goes with the stamp of the institute. Okay, and if you clear the diploma level, that's sort of like year 2, the second level, then you go into the degree level of the course, right? So that's the 3rd year. That's the 3rd year, and there you do more core courses, elective courses. We have a bouquet of courses, both from app development and from machine learning. And then if you finish all that, you get out with a degree from IIT Madras. So one of the nice things about this whole program is all instruction is online and all exams are in person. So in fact, there'll be an exam every month. Okay, every month there is an exam that you have to come to a center and write. And once again, TCS Ion is our exam partner. We thank them for that. So they have to come to a center and write a quiz every month. You have to write the in-semester exam. So it's a very rigorous process. In fact, I think when we say it's an online degree, it's not really an online degree. I mean, most of the other universities which do online degree don't do any offline infrastructure like this. So, right. So we've kept it so rigorous, and so that's one of the strengths of this program. And in fact, if you get a BSc degree, you become an alum of IIT Madras. You get to network with all the other brilliant alums that IIT Madras has over the years. So this is the structure of the program, and it's been quite well received as being flexible, as being open, inclusive in so many interesting ways. Okay, so what are these courses? Since this is a computing conference, I guess you probably are interested in the courses. So like I said, the small group of people, and then we took a lot more people from the computer science department of IIT Madras into the fold. We had several committees look at this, debate this, how to structure this, etc. And then finally, we've come up with a flow like this. And there are some minor changes here. And in fact, the 3rd year has changed a little bit. I've not updated it yet. But anyway, let's focus on the first and second year. In the first year, we do, like I said, English, mathematics, statistics. And there's this very interesting course, computational thinking, 4 weeks of which ran in the qualifier stage, and Madhavan and G. Venkatesh are teaching it. It's got rave reviews. I mean, in fact, there are people who compare Madhavan Mukund and G. Venkatesh to the Sholay heroes, Amitabh and Dharmendra and all that. I mean, they think the course has got such huge reviews. We're really impressed with that. So it's a way to think of how to solve problems like a computer do. They use cards. They use cards with numbers and ask questions, and it's a very interesting way of teaching. And then semester 2 builds on that, and you go and get introduced to Python for the first time. And look at semester 3 and 4. So we've carefully put together a sequence of courses, but I should say semester 3 and 4 are demanding. There's a wide spectrum of courses of different types. You can see the application development part stand out there, database management systems, PDSA, Python, modern application development one. And then you can see the machine learning part also come out, machine learning foundations, techniques, practice. And then you can see even in semester 4, there's more application development courses, this Java course. And then there's also a business component to it. There's a business data management course and business analytics course, so that you have, you get some hands-on experience in how businesses look at data and how they deal with learning and all these things. So you can see overall, we're trying to create this well-rounded sort of graduate who would know enough about machine learning, data science, and all the theory and some practice. Maybe not so much theory, but at least more hands-on. And something very similar on the application development front. Somebody who can put together an application in a very solid way. Somebody who wouldn't be afraid of writing queries into all sorts of databases to pull up the data that they want. So it's a very nice, well-rounded graduate that you would get out of this. And along with the core and elective and other courses that one can do in the third year, we really hope that we can produce a good pool of very employable graduates who would make a big difference and be proud IITM alums going forward. So that's the semester-wise courses. I just thought I should talk about one course here. This is sort of the modern application development one course as it stands today. You can see what it's trying to achieve. Start with HTML, CSS, and then start slowly introducing some sort of a backend into it. Through forms, get data, and have Python and databases process the information on the back end, put it into a DB. And you can see this validation, some front end, JavaScript. And finally, it ends in the last 3 weeks building an app on a framework, but still you build an app. Okay. So now a course like this is going to come in the third semester. A course like this has been sort of attempted at NPTEL, but like assessing this, teaching it effectively, making sure every student who's interested gets good guidance and support in going through this course, because students will need a lot of support in this course, because CSS syntax, for instance, is in so many options, there's so many ways to make mistakes in that, and so many subtleties in these things, and these things keep changing a lot, and getting things installed, getting them up and running, huge challenge for people. And we have people from various different backgrounds. So I'm really looking forward to how our team is going to tackle this. We have so many plans. We hope we can do this well. And look at the assessment for a course like this. How do you assess? How do you assess this? How do you assess how someone can build an app? It's a huge, challenging question. We're working on coming up with ideas for how to do this. So these are the kind of courses. For every course, it's like this. In fact, if you look at other courses that come in this program, they're very challenging. You can imagine what modern application development 2 would be in this course. So hopefully you agree with me that with this kind of a curriculum and syllabi, people coming out of this degree program are going to be really ready to get into the job market and make a difference. Okay, so let me just report on the first round of admissions. We went through that in July 2020. Even in the middle of the pandemic, we got 30,000 plus applicants for the qualification process. We ran 4 weeks of our qualifier training in October. We ran the qualifier exam itself on November 22nd. 20,000 students came and wrote the exam. That itself was a big success, and 8,154 have been offered admissions for the foundation level starting in Jan 2021. So those little dots that you see, green dots on the map of India, that's the students. That's where they sort of reside. You can see the density in different places. It's surprising to see It's not very surprising to see. Maybe the way the density goes, I think UP, Bihar, West Bengal is very high, and down below Kerala is very highly dense. It's just very, very interesting as well. So it's a widespread. You can see even that little dot in Andaman down below on the right. I hope you see that. And we hope to start the second round of admission soon as well. So it's quite a bit of interest in this program. And we also need a lot of help. If you think you have some very good idea, if you think you can contribute as an instructor, mentor, supporter in any way to this program that you think it's interesting, please write back to us. You can get more information from the website onlinedegree.iitm.ac.in. Thank you very much. That was my last slide.
Thank you, Andrew, for that comprehensive information on both NPTEL as well as the new BSc program. We have a few questions here. There is a question from Venkatesh Chapalla. Collaboration is an important part of programming and software development. What challenge does this present MOOC offerings? That is, how are you handling in these programming courses?
We are not handling it. I mean, frankly, I should say, we experimented a bit with trying to create a repository and then getting multiple people to contribute code to it. But I should say it's not worked out.
Please mute it.
I think okay, thank you. Yeah. So we've not had much success with that, I should say. But it's not because I think there's lots of limitations to how much you can do online. But with the program like the online degree, I think we can try much more, right? So I think particularly as students come in and they do well and come to the third year, we are hoping to roll out very nice project electives which students can do as a group. We are hoping to do that. We haven't talked much about it so far, but we are hoping to have such projects going forward. But right now, I should say we have not experimented with that too much.
Yeah, one more question from Ravindra is, how would you compare and contrast the IITM BSc course and its contents with the standard BCA or MCA courses available in many universities for quite some time?
I think we saw all the syllabi. The standard BCA courses are not like this. I think first of all, I don't know. I've seen quite a few, but none of them have such a strong data science ML input yet. I think maybe they should revise based on what we've done. And also even the app dev part is a bit more framework oriented, more standards oriented. It's not so foundational like the way we're building it up. So our treatment is definitely going to be very different. And our emphasis is equally split between programming and data science and ML, which I think is rare among the offerings that are out there. Of course, it's a program from the IITs, that always has value.
Yeah,
I had a quick question, Chitra, for Andrew. This is Manish Jain.
Sure.
Andy, this is Manish. It is nice to finally see you. We've been sort of conversing over emails. I think it's a great program. I just wanted to sort of ask you this question. See, we did this program called 3030 STEM. We had 4 lakh registrations and 60,000 people submitted homeworks. It is almost like an online course, which is what we want to offer as Joy of Engineering. I was just wondering if you have some ideas of some interesting ways you can do some sort of assessment, given that if we are planning to do this course, launch this offline, we will, and assuming we have 4 lakh people who register, how do we effectively, check their homeworks or assignments or quizzes?
I think it's at that scale. I think it's a huge struggle. I mean, one of the things to do, for instance, is to you could try this. I mean, I've asked. We may even try this. You can also try this. You can get them to, as a first stage, record a video of what they've done. If it's a hands-on work, they do a demo, record a video, put it up, and have some sort of crowdsourced filter, which gives you, which points you to the top ones in some way. I mean, that's something we may try.
Somebody suggested that
it's not so high. 4 lakhs is too much. I mean, I don't know if we can go anywhere near
So we did this program once, just 2 weeks back, and for Kerala engineering colleges, and I think some 37,000 students or first year students took part. The question that Neil Dara, Professor Neil Dara was suggesting was that, I don't know if you guys have tried something like a peer checking, peer review, or I mean peer whatever grading.
So that's what I also meant. So whatever people have done, you put it up somewhere, and then peer evaluation. But in all our attempts, peer evaluation just fails in India. I think it's just so hard to do. I mean, you can set up rubrics, you can do this, that, and it's just some random things come out. I mean,
what does that mean, break?
Hello,
Manish. We have not had a smooth, great experience with peer review.
Hello, Manish, can we move on to the next question? Maybe we can take it up in the breakout session. A question from Viraj Kumar is, if the new IITM online degree program does a good job, it will put a large number of colleges out of business. What are your thoughts?
I don't think so.
I wish.
I don't think that's true. I don't think that will happen. In fact, our course, we keep saying, I think a lot of people ask us this question. I think we want people to do it along with a college degree. I don't think we want to do this. So we made it flexible for that reason. We put 3 terms a year. You can do it slowly. We really want people to do it along with another degree. I think it's not. I think an undergraduate degree is so much more about learning how to deal with people, how to talk to somebody, how to find your life mate. I don't know. So many things are there in your undergraduate degree. I think an online degree can only substitute for a very small part of it. And I hope students take it with a good mix.
And I think, if I may add, Chitraji, I think this is an interesting dimension of time that we are living in. I mean, unfortunately or fortunately, people in India and across the world will actually relook at education because of this online thing coming out really big time in the last 6 to 9 months. And if it might force, people will make very interesting choices. They will say, look, this is free, this is whatever, this is good. Why do I have to sort of go to XYZ college? So I think, I don't know if it'll push people out of business or not, but it will definitely make those colleges
it will change the equations. It will change the
it will definitely. It will.
So Chitra,
cannot be status
quo. To add to what Manish is saying, if we bring in the competition and push colleges into investing more in quality, I think that's wonderful, isn't it? I mean, so either way.
I mean, and not just these colleges. I think this will push even IITs into making sure that
I mean, I said colleges, it includes everybody.
Yes.
Why not? I mean, that's the challenge for us. I mean, let's see how successful we are, right? I mean, where are people are going to get placed? How well they're going to do in the job market? You have to see all that. We only started. So let's go ahead and see, and then we'll make a comment on how it works.
Yeah, definitely. That is no college is currently offering the computational thinking as a separate course, and having that designed by Madhavan and Venkatesh. I guess definitely that by itself is a value add there.
Just taking our syllabi and curriculum and implementing it in a college, that can be done, right? So we are not claiming any copyright or IP on this. We put it up everywhere, so that can be done. And all our lectures are out there on YouTube. People can see it. It's good that way.
Yeah, thank you so much, Andrew. So I think you did an excellent job in maintaining the time. Thank you so much. Virtual applause for you.
Thank you.
Thank you again. Yeah. The last one in this session.